Hello, my name is Henry Myler, and I'm a senior from Millwood, New Jersey. One of the most important issues to me is term limits on Congress. Currently, members of Congress are allowed to run for as many terms as they want. Critics of the system view that it has led to Congress becoming old, corrupt, and inefficient. Over the course of this documentary, we will be exploring the history of term limits, both sides of the term limits debate, and how the president can implement term limits. Let's get right into it. Term limits in the United States began as an informal precedent set by George Washington when he stepped down after 2 terms as president. Every president since then has only served 2 terms until Franklin Delano Roosevelt's unprecedented 4 terms. To maintain Washington's president, the 22nd Amendment was ratified on February 27, 1951, creating a strict 2-term limit to the presidency. Supporters argue that the amendment would prevent a president from consolidating power, while detractors argue that it limited democracy by preventing voters from re-electing a popular incumbent. In the early 1990s, grassroots support for congressional term limits organized by U.S. term limits began to grow, leading to 23 states creating congressional term limits, refusing to allow candidates from their state to appear on the ballot if they had served too many terms. In 1995, the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that states cannot set stricter rules for who can serve in Congress than what the Constitution already requires. The majority opinion, authored by John Paul Stevens, explained that the right to choose elected representatives reside with the people, not the state governments. The dissenting opinion, issued by Clarence Thomas, argued that the Constitution did not prohibit states from creating their own rules for who can be a member of Congress. Since then, U.S. term limits has advocated creating a constitutional amendment to implement term limits through the use of an Article 5 convention.
So they put this second component into Article 5, which allows the states, 2/3 of the states, to call an amendments convention. It's not a constitutional convention, but it's an amendments convention where the states can offer amendments, which are nothing but recommendations that go back to the states, and then 3/4 of the states, 38 states, would have to approve that.
So far, 9 states have called for the convention. According to a Pew Research poll, 87% of Americans support limiting the number of terms that a member of Congress can serve. This support is bipartisan, with 86% of Democrats surveyed and 90% of Republicans surveyed supporting term limits. Term limits advocates argue that term limits prevent career politicians, as members of Congress are constantly rotating, and they lead to younger and more diverse Congress, and reduce entrenched gridlock in Congress. With new members that know they have a finite amount of time to positively change the nation, newly elected members of Congress will put all of their resources into passing legislation for the American people, rather than running for re-election. However, a good portion of Americans are hesitant about term limits, especially congressmen themselves. The main argument against term limits is that elections already serve as a sufficient limit on a member of Congress's term, and that voters should decide how many terms a member of Congress gets. However, incumbents have a significant advantage in running for re-election. The re-election rate in 2024 was almost 97%. Incumbents have name recognition, free mail advertisements as part of the franking privilege, money from donors and special interests, and have brought money home through casework and pork barrel spending. Supporters of term limits argue that this reduces the effectiveness of elections in limiting the term office of politicians. Another argument against term limits is that politicians require experience to get things done. However, to counter this, we can take a look at the 118th Congress, which was in power from 2023 to 2025. At the beginning of 2023, the average length of service for members of the House was 8.5 years and 11.2 years in the Senate. This is a pretty experienced Congress, and they should be well adept in lawmaking. However, this Congress was one of the least effective in American history, passing only 636 bills.
Each one of these is a legislative session. So this would be the 107th Congress. That's the first year of the 107th Congress, the second year of the 107th Congress. See that one down there at the end? Barely? That's us.
Continuing a downward trend from 1,000 bills in 106th Congress and over 3,000 bills in the 91st. However, one argument that does have some credence is that term limits may increase partisanship and could make legislators less responsive to the American people. Since popular moderates won't be able to hold many terms in office, more partisan figures may be able to win. For example, take Maine, where moderate Republican Susan Collins has represented the state since 1997. If term limits were in place, she would have been ineligible to run in 2026. In a state that traditionally leans Democratic, voters might be more inclined to support a Democratic candidate over a lesser-known Republican, even if that Republican were to align more closely with Collins' moderate approach. This shift could result in a more partisan dynamic, but the way to counter this will be to encourage citizens to vote based on their beliefs rather than their party. In the end, it remains to be seen what exactly the results of term limits would be, and many continue to debate the effectiveness of reducing gridlock, corruption, or partisanship. Now, incoming President Donald Trump and I don't agree on a lot, but we do align on this issue.
If I'm elected president, I will push for a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on all members of Congress.
There are a few ways Trump can attempt to get term limits passed. The first is to work with congressional Democrats and Republicans to propose a constitutional amendment for term limits. This would require a 2/3 vote in both houses of Congress, which is a difficult task. However, Trump could argue that the sheer popularity of term limits would make this a winning issue for any legislator, Democratic or Republican, to take on. Additionally, Trump can make a compromise or a deal in order to gain Democratic votes for an amendment in exchange for giving up another goal of his. Ultimately, any of these strategies require deft negotiating skills, challenging even the author of the art of the deal. Another way would be to support state-level initiatives. Many people do not know about the proposal to create amendments at the state level to call for an article convention. And with Trump using the bully pulpit to call on states to call for a convention, he may be able to hit the 34 state requirement. Finally, Trump can encourage friendly states to ignore the U.S. Thornton decision altogether by creating term limits at the state level. In conclusion, term limits are a popular solution to the age, corruption, and inefficiency in Congress. Supporters argue that they would encourage diversity and youth in government and create citizen legislators more responsible to the needs of the American people. Detractors argue that elections already serve as sufficient term limits, experience is necessary in Congress, and that term limits would only increase the self-serving nature of politicians and political polarization. Our next president, Donald Trump, can fight for term limits by making deals with congressional Democrats and Republicans and encouraging term limits at the state level. Thank you, and have a great day.